We are delighted to welcome one and all to the June 2022 program of JW Broadcasting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, all of the students in the previous class of Gilead were from the United States. However, we were very happy that the governing body approved for 24 fully vaccinated brothers and sisters from 13 different lands to be invited to the 151st class of Gilead. On March 12, 2022, this enthusiastic class graduated. How did they personally benefit from the school? How will they use their 5 months of Bible training? Where will they be assigned? Please enjoy part 1 of the 151st Gilead graduation program.
Well, Class 151, you seem excited, and you should be. This is a very special day for you, one you'll never forget, just as the entire course of Gilead you'll never forget. And we're happy to be with you today, and we will all benefit from the things that are said today at this spiritual program. But even so, we know that although this will benefit everyone involved, the program has been designed with you in mind. So every talk given, the brothers have prayerfully considered what can be said to encourage, and as you listen, just be certain that the brothers have had that in mind. But all of us listening today will benefit from the good things that will come out in this program. When the day is over, you'll look back and recall a program that honored Jehovah and confirmed his love for you. And again, you're never going to forget it. During the past 5 months of your schooling, you were asked to draw out principles from many different Bible accounts, and you worked hard to do that, didn't you? And you learned new ways to do that, to see the scriptures as something that Jehovah wants us to listen to very carefully and then apply its fine points in our lives. So those accounts focused on genuine servants of God who with his help succeeded in doing his will, and you are doing the same. You examined principles for Christian living. You examined principles for teaching others. You looked at principles about how to organize the work and so forth. This graduation program will do the same. With that in mind, I have a theme for these brief introductory comments. I thought it would keep me focused, so here's my theme. You are ready to face the things ahead. Now, notice it's not a question, are you ready? It's a statement. You are ready to face the things ahead. Now, why can we say this with such confidence? Because we see your faith. We see your deep love for our Heavenly Father, Jehovah, and his Son. You've trusted in Jehovah, you have done well, and you made it to graduation day. I know some of you wondered if you would make it, but you did. Here you are. You're graduating with the 151st class of Gilead. What a delight. You undoubtedly agree more than ever before with what the Apostle Paul wrote at Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13, where he said, "For all things I have the strength through" who? The one who gives me power. And we know who that is. And Jehovah has surely helped you during these months to make a success of Gilead School. And we're very proud of you for that. And you can be certain that Jehovah is just delighted to see that because you love him. And you went through this course, you've gone through it with that in mind. True? Jehovah gave you what you needed. And that's a blessing you must never forget. By remembering it, you will put that blessing to work for you wherever you are in your service to Jehovah in the weeks, months, and years ahead. Really, these things you learn that all of us learn now will serve us well forever. For example, whenever you face a task in the future that seems almost too large for you to tackle or handle, you'll remember how Jehovah helped you in this school. Your experience in going through Gilead now adds to your extensive experience, the experience you already had in serving Jehovah. But this just enriches it that much more, and it will help you as you face trials and tests ahead, in that you'll know you can make it through what you may view as difficult times, because Jehovah will help you to do it. You are growing ever more and more ready to face the things ahead. You already are, but you'll grow more and more so, like all of us will, as we reflect on and remember what Jehovah has done for us, such as helping you to complete this Bible school course. Here's an example of things you must be ready to handle or you may face. Soon after your graduation, you will be off to your assignments, and as you go, have in mind Jesus' words where he taught his disciples to pray, "Do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the wicked one." Now, focus on the words temptation and wicked one. They go together, don't they? Temptation and wicked one. Satan, the wicked one, doesn't like your success here at Gilead. You can be certain that he hates this school and all the good that it has accomplished through the years in honoring Jehovah, benefiting his people and those in the field. So then, what temptations or stumbling blocks might Satan try to place before you now that you've graduated from this school? Well, here are a few things, and they are things that all of us must face. For example, if you're not careful, you might be tempted to become self-satisfied with what you have accomplished. Don't ever let that happen to you. Never be self-satisfied. Keep setting goals for yourself. Strive to please Jehovah more and more each day in all that you do. It's the principles that we draw from God's word that help us to do that. Yet here's a caution. Your healthy desire to keep setting goals must not be allowed to lead you into the next temptation, and that is this, the temptation to give in to pride. That can happen. It can happen to a person when he or she forgets who has truly helped them to succeed, and that is Jehovah. Those who forget about Jehovah may become ambitious and try to outshine others. We must never allow that to happen to our heart and mind. We must never become like that. In fact, we must fight against pride. And one key way to do this is to remember that in all that you do, in all that we do, it is always about Jehovah. When we have that focus, we will succeed in doing things his way, the right way, no matter what we face in the future. So we reflect on his blessings. We see how he strengthened us. We're confident he will continue to do so, and he will do that for you. But we never forget that he's in charge. It's always about Jehovah. And so we do everything out of love for him. And that, of course, leads into love for others, because he loves others. If a person fails to remember how Jehovah has blessed him or her, that person might become big in their own eyes, like King Saul did. You'll recall his example. Where did that eventually lead Saul? It led him away from Jehovah's favor and blessing. People like Saul fail to maintain faith. They fail to remain humble. What about your faith and your humility? Well, we see those good qualities in you, and that's why we confidently state you're ready to face the things ahead. Along with Jehovah's blessing, your faith will help you to conquer any temptation that the wicked one, the tempter, may place before you. And your humility will help you to remain unbreakable. You will be able to defeat the tempter. Along with resisting temptation, your Gilead training will also help you to continue supporting our vital work for Jehovah's kingdom, his people, and for those who will yet listen. In fact, for all of God's people, this is the greater purpose behind any training that we receive from him, right? So then, wherever you serve, Never forget the purpose behind the blessings that you have experienced in this school. Trust in Jehovah and in his Son to help you at all times. Use your Gilead training in the branches and territories to where you are going. Keep in mind that with God's help, the one who gives you power, you are ready to face the things ahead. Well, we will say a little bit more about this at the conclusion of the program. Now we're going to enjoy a series of encouraging talks that for all of us will strengthen our faith, build up our trust in God, and highlight his wonderful purpose that we support. So for the first talk, we have Brother Garrett Loesch of the governing body. He will speak on the subject, Cultivate Love That Never Fails.
Do you want to be loved by others? Naturally, we all want to be loved. Love is a basic human need. Babies thrive on it, teenagers thrive on it, marriage mates thrive on it, Bethelites and Gilead students thrive on it. It makes us happy to be loved. What about loving others? Love is unselfish. Loving others makes the receivers happy, but it also makes us as givers happy. Love is the reason why we exist. Jehovah created us out of unselfish love to let us share not only life, but also the privilege to love him. Jehovah does not need our love since he does not depend on anybody else, but he appreciates our love. He loves to be loved by us. He created us also with the ability to love others besides him. We love to do good to others. We love to love them. Since when does love exist? It always existed. It had no beginning. Why? Because God is love, and we know God had no beginning. So, God's love had no beginning. There was no time in the past when God existed, but love did not. Jehovah not only has love, but he is love personified. Jehovah created us in his image. This is why we have the superb privilege to reflect his love. In the world, books, movies, and songs often deal with love. But what kind of love? Usually romantic love, love that often fails. Genuine love of God and of neighbor is widely lacking today. When describing the last days, the prophecy at 2 Timothy 3, verse 2, has come true that people are often lovers of themselves. Me-ism and egotism is widespread. One journal carries the title Self. People think, first me, then nothing, and then me again, and then perhaps somebody else. In 2 Timothy 3:2, Paul also wrote that people would be lovers of money. In the same prophecy, it says the majority would be lovers of pleasures rather than lovers of God. For many, entertainment and sports have become the dominant aspect of their lives. Furthermore, 1 John 2:15 indicates there is a battle between two loves, love of Jehovah and love of the world. The stronger our love for Jehovah is, the better we will be able to resist the love of the world. At Matthew 22:37, Jesus encouraged cultivating love for God to the fullest extent possible. You must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart and with your whole soul and with your whole mind. How does love for Jehovah grow? We must tend to the good soil of our heart where the seed of kingdom truth was sown. How does love between two persons grow? One way is by communication. We communicate with Jehovah through prayer. Jehovah communicates with us through the Bible and his organization. If we study the Bible and read it daily, as well as attend the congregation meetings, our love for Him will continue to grow. Love needs to grow. It is not a matter of how much we know, but how much we love what we know. Head knowledge is not enough. There needs to be heart knowledge. Growing in love is a process. A plant grows when it is watered. Love grows if it is watered with the water of truth. In Philippians chapter 1, verse 9, Paul says, "And this is what I continue praying, that your love may abound yet more and more." Love grows gradually. It is not enough to have a little love. We should abound in love. Jehovah sets the example. He expressed His love by providing the ransom. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus compares Jehovah with a king who was willing to forgive a debt of 60 million denarii, or 10,000 silver talents. This certainly impresses His love for us. Jesus expressed His love by being willing to die for our sins. This stirs our love in return. The more one has been forgiven, the more one will love. But love is not dependent on having one's sins forgiven. Jesus loved Jehovah so much, but had not a single sin that needed to be forgiven. But He loved Jehovah, and He loved us. The night before He died, He said at John 14:31, "I love the Father." Do we not, all of us, feel the same? How can we demonstrate our love of God in return? We can do so by serving Jehovah with all our heart. This includes preaching and teaching. True or false? The most important reason for preaching and teaching is love of neighbor. It sounds good, but it is wrong. The most important motive for preaching is, first of all, love for Jehovah, and the most important objective is to praise Jehovah. We want to glorify Him and to support the vindication of His sovereignty. Love of neighbor comes second. But we also need to show love to our brothers. In one congregation, several sisters took daily turns to prepare a hot meal for a quadriplegic brother. This shows that our love extends beyond preaching. It is like with the parable of the Samaritan who cared for the man that was assaulted and hurt by robbers. The Samaritan did not preach to the man who fell among the robbers. He just showed unselfish love to him. Jesus emphasized that our neighborly love should include even enemies. In Matthew 5:44, He said, "I say to you, continue to love your enemies and to pray for those persecuting you." Our love will be perfect if we love even our enemies. Jehovah gives sunshine and rain even to wicked opposers. One publisher went to a hospital to visit an opposing husband. The man appreciated this kind gesture very much. Think of what Jesus has endured. He was hated without cause, persecuted, reviled, and murdered. Help people to develop their appreciation for what Jesus did for us. Show interested ones that because of the ransom, Jehovah forgives us our sins and opened the way to everlasting life. When you talk about the ransom, don't do it just in a legalistic way by saying, see, like on scales, on one side was Adam and on the other side was Jesus. God's justice required that by giving His life, Jesus restored what Adam had lost. Rather, make the student meditate and develop heart appreciation and love for what Jesus did. Review with the student what Jesus went through prior to His execution. Help him picture in his mind how Jesus was flogged, producing quivering ribbons of bleeding flesh. Help the student sense how Jesus was mocked. After his tortured beating, soldiers said to him mockingly, "Good day, you king of the Jews." Also, they spit on him and slapped him in the face. Remind the student how the soldiers later pounded large nails into his hands and into his feet. With the stake swung upright, the pain was excruciating, for the weight of the body tore all the nail wounds. Yet, rather than threaten, Jesus prayed for the Roman soldiers, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Meditating on what Jesus did for us, does this not greatly deepen our love for him? At Ephesians 3:19, Paul wrote, "The love of the Christ surpasses knowledge." It is not the love for the Christ, but the love that Jesus displayed that surpasses head knowledge and strikes a wonderful chord in our figurative heart. Jesus' course stimulates a response in us. As we think about what Christ has done for us, our love for him deepens. In fact, 2 Corinthians 5:14 says, "For the love the Christ has compels us." After mentioning gifts of the Spirit such as healing and speaking in tongues, Paul explained that 1 Corinthians 12:31, "Yet I show you a surpassing way." What is this way? The way of love. In what way is it surpassing? In the sense that the gifts of the Spirit, including prophesying, would be done away with. But love would always be there. Jehovah is eternal. His love will never fail, never end, but will continue forever and ever and ever. Therefore, Paul wrote, "There remain faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love." He also wrote, "Love never fails. Love endures all things." Many brothers suffered a lot during World War II and today in Russia and other countries. Today there are a number of governments in the world that suppress the truth. As we live in the time of the end, this is not surprising to us. It will get worse as the Great Tribulation comes closer. World conditions also get worse in many parts of the world, and COVID has claimed many human victims. But we witnesses keep enduring by pursuing the surpassing way of love that never fails. We shall not only live forever, but also love forever and be loved forever.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Loesch, for reminding us of how great Jehovah's love is for us, and how we in turn must show heartfelt, wholehearted love for Jehovah and others. Our next talk on the program will be given by Brother Gaius Glockentine, a helper to the publishing committee, and the theme for his talk is, "How often will you go to Shiloh?"
They were speechless when they heard she would leave home and join full-time service. Instead of pursuing their common goals, dreams, and hopes, she would do whatever she was told to do. What a sacrifice. They were so proud of her. And they started thinking about what to do in order to support her. Whom are we talking about? Let us open to Judges 11. And let's find out who they were and what they did. Dear soon-to-be graduates, what they did is something that will help you to succeed in your assignment. Let's read, please, Judges 11, verse 40. From year to year, the young women of Israel would go to give commendation to the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in the year. The young women of Israel went to the sanctuary in Shiloh in order to give commendation and praise to the daughter of Jephthah. Commendation strengthened this full-time servant of Jehovah. Is this not what you want to do too? So that's why we have the question for you. How often will you go to Shiloh? Will you strengthen others and stabilize the organization by regularly commending and praising others? Let us therefore ask the following questions. What type of commendation is effective in strengthening others? How can you imitate the young women of Israel, and why do you want to give commendation regularly? Let's start with the first question. What type of commendation is effective in strengthening others? And let us please look at the example that Jesus set as we turn to Mark chapter 5. Here, he commends the frightened sick woman who touched his outer garment. As we read Mark chapter 5, verse 34, please watch out for 5 elements of effective commendation. Mark 5, verse 34, he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed from your grievous sickness." Did you note what made this commendation effective? First, effective commendation is specific. Jesus commended the woman for what she did. Her faith moved her to act. Effective commendation is sincere. The woman's faith was real and outstanding. Did you notice that Jesus did not use the opportunity to counsel her for violating the law? This might have made his commendation sound insincere. Third, effective commendation is personal. Jesus used the expression, "daughter." That expression emphasized his tender concern for her. Fourth, effective commendation is more than words. Jesus acknowledged the needs of the woman and followed up with deeds. He healed her. And fifth, effective commendation is unselfish. Jesus did not commend the woman in order to make himself look good, but he was concerned about her and wanted to make her feel good. Now, can you do the same? Let's go back to Judges 11, and let's look again at verse 40. So this is Judges 11, verse 40. And let's answer the second question, how can you imitate the young women of Israel? So the verse started here in verse 40, saying, from year to year. So this means regularly, repeatedly. The young women would praise the same person again and again. In your assignment, as you work with others in Bethel, in the ministry, or watch them in your congregation, can you repeatedly praise them? For instance, could you praise them for their zeal, their fine efforts, or for their acts of love? Could you send an upbuilding text message saying, great job, well done, thumbs up, loved it? Maybe along with a brief comment. These messages do not require a lot of effort and time, but they can go a long way. One time is not enough. Do it again and again. Don't worry, the person could get a big head. In the Bible, Jehovah praised and commended the persons that he loved repeatedly. Commending others again and again is a good thing. Now the verse continues here saying, the young women of Israel would go to give commendation to the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in the year. Being away from their family obligation must have been a sacrifice. Somebody else must have taken over their usual work. They had to travel to Shiloh, and they may also have brought a gift. Now, could this serve as a reminder that giving commendation might sometimes require a little bit more time and effort, can come at a personal cost? Yes. Calling somebody or visiting him requires time and effort. Spending time with your brother and sister honors them. Being out with them in the ministry, working together on a project, or asking them for advice really makes them feel good and can be a powerful commendation. It's worth all it costs. Timing is important too. Proverbs 15 verse 23 states, "A word spoken at the right time, how good is it?" So what is the right time for commendation? The verses leading up to our theme scripture here mention that Jephthah's daughter right away got much needed support. So generally speaking, commendation is of greatest value when it's given as soon as the opportunity comes up, even if it's initially just a brief comment. The sooner somebody receives positive feedback, the quicker feelings of insecurity or doubts will vanish, and the sooner the other person will be happy and feel good. Please, do not wait too long, but act right away. Now, this leads us to our third and final question. Why do you want to give commendation regularly? As you go to your assignments, you will be surrounded by many daughters of Jephthah, faithful, full-time servants of Jehovah who made sacrifices to serve. This auditorium is full of them, and you are among them. You will meet brothers and sisters in the congregation, and some of them are insecure, worried, sometimes doubt that they are worth anything. They are giving their very best to stay faithful despite challenges, fighting with their own imperfection, dealing with the results of their own mistakes, and are sometimes discouraged because of setbacks. They need commendation. We all need commendation. Because commendation enhances a person's self-esteem. It builds confidence and motivates to action. It reinforces our desire to do good things. And it encourages us to keep on doing our very best. Please, go to Shiloh as often as possible. Now, there's another important aspect. The reality is that when you work closely with brothers and sisters, you see their flaws and mistakes. So what you're going to do? Will you ignore that person? Or will you try to imitate Jehovah, who is searching for the good in us? Make it a habit to search for the good and then give voice to the positive. Now, what happens to us if we are doing it that way? It can change us. It can change us from being a complainer to being a commender. A commender focuses on the good in others. He sees the others with Jehovah's eyes. A commender is very happy because he sees all the beauty around him. So if you gain a reputation for commending rather than complaining, you will succeed in your assignment because others will love to work with you. Dear soon-to-be graduates of the 151st class of Gilead, please make commending and praising others part of your personality, something that comes naturally. So how often will you go to Shiloh? Please go to Shiloh as often as possible.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Glockentine. That was such a nice follow-up to Brother Loesch's talk on love. And you really helped us, all of us, brothers and sisters, to remember the need to encourage and repeatedly commend others. Well, this next subject seems to follow right along too, so nicely. Does Jehovah recognize you? And it will be delivered by Brother Luther Georges, a member of the U.S. Branch Committee.
How do you feel when you have exerted yourself in some way and someone you deeply respect says to you, "Well done"? Don't you feel assured that your efforts were recognized and appreciated? However, when you, dear brothers and sisters in the 151st class of Gilead, arrive at your assignments and you exert yourself to accomplish the work you've been given and give of yourself to encourage and help others, suppose you don't always receive an audible "well done" from others. How will you feel? Does that mean that your efforts were not appreciated and recognized? To answer those questions, we're going to consider first what Jesus had to say on the subject. Second, what we can learn from some Bible examples. And third, what this means for you personally. Although the desire to receive recognition from humans is normal, Jesus helps us to have a balanced view in Matthew chapter 6. Please turn to Matthew chapter 6 and note verse 3. Matthew 6, verse 3. "But you, when making gifts of mercy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." Now, what did Jesus mean? Well, these gifts of mercy were really donations for needy ones. But with these words, Jesus was exhorting his disciples not to imitate the insincere religious leaders of his day, who publicized their gifts of mercy just to be recognized by humans. Now, what would be the result of heeding Jesus' words here in verse 3? Well, Jesus explains in verse 4. He says, "So that your gifts of mercy may be in secret." Now, for a moment, think of the gifts of mercy, the kindnesses, the theocratic assignments that you have performed in secret. For example, likely you've many times telephoned, visited an ailing brother or sister just to reassure them of your love, your concern, and even pray with them. Or perhaps you spent considerable time being a spiritual mentor to a Christian youth. Or you may have given generously of yourself to encourage and provide practical assistance to a distressed brother or sister. All of this you did in secret. However, Jesus said someone you deeply respect did take note. Look there at Matthew 6, verse 4. He stated in the B part, "Your Father who looks on in secret." The point is, Jehovah, who resides in the heavens, is invisible to mankind. So he remains in secret as far as humans are concerned. But your good deeds are recognized with approval by Jehovah. Now, how can we be sure of that? Well, there are many Bible examples of faithful men and women, young and old, whose good deeds and heartfelt devotion were recognized with approval by Jehovah. One example is Obadiah, the household steward of wicked King Ahab. 1 Kings chapter 18 explains that he discreetly, secretly, and cautiously hid 100 of Jehovah's prophets so they would not be killed by wicked Jezebel. Now, as illustrated here, Obadiah supplied them with bread and water in groups of 50 in caves without being observed by others. How do we know that Jehovah in secret recognized with approval this faithful, generous, compassionate man? Well, we know because his courageous acts are recorded in the Bible for generations of people to read about. Another example is the young, nameless Israelite girl mentioned in 2 Kings chapter 5. She was taken away from her God-fearing family by the Syrians. Now, as can be seen in this picture, although surrounded by false worshipers, she courageously told Naaman's wife about Jehovah's prophet Elisha. That led to Naaman's miraculous healing of his leprosy. It led to Naaman becoming a worshiper of Jehovah, and it certainly contributed to Jehovah's praise. We don't know the name of that little girl, do we? But Jehovah does, who in secret looked favorably on that young girl. So these two examples and many others in the scriptures assure you that your good deeds are noted by Jehovah. Please note, though, that Jehovah does more than just look on in secret. Look again, please, at Matthew chapter 6, verse 4. The B part, read in its entirety, says, "Then your Father who looks on in secret will repay you." Often Jehovah repays us in unexpected ways, in ways that are better and more meaningful than humans could ever give us in the way of recognition. But how does Jehovah repay us? While there are many ways, we're going to focus just on three significant ones. One way is mentioned in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Matthew 5:7, Jesus said, "Happy are the merciful, since they will be shown mercy." So by our being kind and merciful, Jehovah mercifully forgives us and allows us to enjoy a warm personal relationship with him. A second way he repays us is mentioned in Mark 10, verses 29 and 30. There, Jesus promised that we would receive 100 times more than anything we sacrifice to serve Jehovah. And one resulting tangible reward that Jehovah provides is our ever-expanding, loving spiritual family. A third way he repays is by means of his promise of the priceless reward of everlasting life in God's new world. And regarding righteous ones who perform good deeds but fall asleep in death before the end of this system, Jesus in Luke chapter 14, verse 14, gave the assurance that they will be repaid in the resurrection. And then they will see the full effect of Jehovah's recognition and blessing on their good deeds. In addition to your gifts of mercy and your new assignments, your heartfelt devotion will be reflected as you, with Jehovah's help, face and successfully endure various challenges, many of which others will know nothing about. But even though you may not receive recognition or a complimentary "well done" from others for your good deeds, your kindnesses, your sacrifices, and your endurance, please remain confident that you will be recognized with approval by a loving Father, Jehovah. And as Jesus promised, Jehovah, who looks on in secret, will repay you.
Thank you very much, Brother Georges, for highlighting how that no matter what happens around us, Jehovah sees and he treasures the good that we try so hard to do. Next, we have here Brother Richard Chilton, one of the Gilead School instructors, and he will speak on the subject, "Who will rise up for me?"
I'd like to start by telling you an experience of a brother at Patterson Bethel. He had recently lost a loved one, a parent, in fact, in a horrible accident. And he had desperately needed to talk with someone about what he was going through and how he was feeling. He was, in a word, unraveling, and he needed help. So he called a close friend of his at Wallkill, Bethel, but unfortunately, the brother said that at that time, he was unable to talk. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation? That is, feeling like you're drowning and in need of assistance. The psalmist did. Please read with me his words in the 94th Psalm and note his question. It's Psalm 94, verse 16. The psalmist asked in part, "Who will rise up for me?" who will rise up for me? He goes on to answer his own question in verses 17 and 19. He says, if Jehovah had not been my helper, I would have soon perished. When anxieties overwhelmed me, you, Jehovah, you comforted and soothed me. Well, when you and I send up such heartfelt prayers to Jehovah, how does he rise up for us? And how can we imitate him by rising up in behalf of others? Let's go back in time and consider an example. During the days of Israel's judges, there lived a wealthy landowner named Boaz. In obedience to Jehovah's law, he made sure that in his fields, gleanings were left for the afflicted and poor. One day, he observes a woman working in his fields that he does not recognize. And soon he learns that she is the foreigner, Ruth, whom up to this point he has only heard about. Well, what does Boaz do? Notice how he rose up for her in Ruth chapter 2, verse 8. Ruth chapter 2, starting with verse 8, Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, do not go away to glean in another field, and do not go anywhere else. Stay close by my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that they harvest, and go with them. I have commanded the young men not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the young men have drawn. Clearly, Boaz protected Ruth. He brought her under his loving care. We see him looking out for, shielding, defending the one in need. And when Ruth, according to verse 10, questions his motive for helping her, a foreigner, notice a second way he rose up in her behalf. Ruth chapter 2, verse 11. Boaz answered her, a full report was made to me of all you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your relatives to go to a people whom you had not known before. May Jehovah reward you for what you have done, and may there be a perfect wage for you from Jehovah, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. To this she said, let me find favor in your eyes, my Lord, because you have comforted me and spoken reassuringly to your servant, although I am not even one of your servants. When Boaz spoke reassuringly to Ruth, the footnote says that he spoke to her heart. How so? His words were not just general expressions of praise. They were specific to Ruth and to her personal circumstances. He reassured Ruth that Jehovah loved her for all the sacrifices she had made, and she would not be forgotten. Those comforting, encouraging words of Boaz convinced Ruth that everything was going to be okay. But Boaz did more than offer reassuring words. Notice the third way he rose up. Ruth chapter 4, verse 9. By taking swift action, Boaz ensured that the inheritance of his deceased relative Elimelech would remain in their family. Chapter 4, verse 9. Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I am buying from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Kilion and Mahlon. I am also acquiring Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, as a wife. For what reason? To restore the name of the dead man to his inheritance, so that the name of the dead man will not be cut off from among his brothers and from the city gate of his home. You are witnesses today. Jehovah used Boaz to rise up for Ruth and Naomi in three main ways. One, he protected those under his care. Secondly, he spoke reassuringly to them. And third, he took action, seeing the need, and rose up to meet it. He protected, he reassured, he took action. Well, how about you and me? Should we not do the same for those in need of assistance? And what can result when we do? Well, before you answer that, let's go back to our opening experience. You see, the very next morning, upon arriving at his work assignment, our distressed brother received a phone call from the Patterson lobby. It was the brother, the friend from Wallkill. He had gotten up early that morning, had driven over an hour from the Wallkill complex to reach the Patterson complex by 8 a.m. He had arranged for a private conference room, and he was there waiting for that distressed friend so he could find out, how can I help? That was 22 years ago, but I can tell you now, I have never forgotten what that friend did for me when he rose up for me on that day. By means of the action that he took, I felt reassured, I felt protected, I felt loved. So, the question for you 24 students, in fact, the question for all of us in our hearing audience is this: what will you do to rise up for someone in need? We have every confidence that each and every one of you will answer that call when it comes, saying, here I am. I will rise up for you. How can I help?
Thank you so much, Brother Chilton. We appreciated that reassurance that when we rise up to help others, Jehovah will love us for it, and others will rise up in turn for us. Next, we have another instructor from the Gilead School, Brother Trent Lippold, and his theme is a question, will I be more?
The Apostle Paul was not a man given to boasting, but on one occasion he felt compelled to boast a little. And that account is found for us in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Please read with me 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 23. Are they ministers of Christ? I reply like a madman. I am more outstandingly one. What was the subject of Paul's boast? Being a minister of Christ. And now, being a minister of Christ, what was Paul's focus in this boast? He said, I am more outstandingly one. William Tyndale, when he translated this verse, he kept the very terseness and the clarity of the Greek when he simply said, I am more. That's Paul's boast. What is he focusing on, though, as a minister of Christ in his boast? He said, I have done more work. And now from verses 23 through 27, he gives almost a resume of what happened to him because of the work Paul did as a minister of Christ. well, how will your properly focusing on your work as a minister of Christ help you to succeed in your assignments? Let's consider an example, and it's found in the book of Luke, chapter 8. Luke chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. Shortly afterward, he, this is Christ, traveled from city to city and from village to village, preaching and declaring the good news of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, as were certain women who had been cured of wicked spirits and sicknesses. Mary, who was called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had come out. Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's man in charge. Susanna, and many other women who were ministering to them from their belongings. A group, Christ, the 12, and women. Women who ministered to the others. What did that mean? Did it mean they cooked the meals, washed the dishes, mended the clothes? Possibly, but not necessarily entirely that. These women ministered to the others by helping them to complete their assignment as they went on completing their assignment as disciples of Christ. Notice the backgrounds of these women. Luke mentions 3. He says, they're women who were cured of wicked spirits and sicknesses. Look at Mary. Mary, he says, from whom 7 demons had come out. He also mentions Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's man in charge, and Susanna. Think of their backgrounds. Mary, 7 demons came out of her. I wonder how that demon possession contributed to her personality. What about Joanna? Joanna, it says, the wife of Chuza, Herod's man in charge. In other words, Joanna lived in Herod's palace. She was a woman of the court. And also Susanna. It doesn't say specifically much about her other than perhaps she was one of the women who was cured of a sickness. What was her personality like? How did these personalities work together? Here's part of the example of what can help us to minister. And that is to realize when we look through the gospel accounts, we never find these women bickering or arguing amongst themselves about position or prominence or place, unlike some others in the group that were with them. Why? Because these women focused on their ministry. They focused on their work. They served others and they served each other. And that is a powerful example for you and for me. Remember, in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6, it's prophesied, the wolf will reside with the lamb, lions with calves. It's not going to be all lambs. You will meet diverse personalities in your assignments, and you will have to work with diverse personalities, just like the women did. So what will you do? Remember that some of the very qualities that make a lion or make a wolf might be exactly the qualities you need to help you fulfill your assignment. So they're not all lambs, but they all are our brothers and sisters. So if Jehovah allows a diversity of personalities within the context of the new personality, then so should we. Diverse personalities make for rich friendships. You know, Luke wrote these words he's talking about events that took place around the Passover of 31 CE. When you think of these women were with Jesus at Golgotha. These women were at the tomb. Likely these women may have been in the upper room as well. That tells us that these women endured challenging circumstances. They stuck with the Lord. What helped them? Look back at the verse. Verse 2. As were certain women who had been cured of wicked spirits and sicknesses. these women deeply appreciated what Jesus had done for them. Certainly, they glorified God because of what Jesus had done for them, but they also allowed their appreciation to help them endure in a self-sacrificing life of ministering to others. So stay appreciative, and that will help you endure. Our friends are dying. Our friends are getting sick. Meditate on how Jehovah has blessed you. Meditate on the little things each day, the little gifts Jehovah gives you. Maybe it's simply the peace in your heart and mind this day. Remain appreciative for that, and that will help you endure as a minister in your assignment. One other thing that's noteworthy about these women is that these women were not easily thrown off by others. Remember, we talked about others, the other disciples. When other disciples left Christ, the women stayed. At Golgotha, even the apostles, to a certain degree, had left Christ or fled. The women stayed. They stood solidly on their own faith. Brothers and sisters, do not be thrown off easily by others. Sometimes, you can imagine for these women with the disciples, it felt like a family. And sometimes today in families, ones choose to leave Jehovah. Even at this late hour, stand solidly on your own faith. Like the women, do not be easily thrown off. Stay with Jehovah. These women must have made quite an impression on Luke because he's the only gospel writer who mentions them by name in this way. And interestingly, Luke was a traveling companion of Paul from about 50 CE in Troas. He picked up with Paul and started traveling with him, and he traveled with him for years. I wonder if they spoke together. I wonder if they spoke about these women. I wonder if they talked about how important it is to focus on the work of ministering and not to get distracted by other things. Or I wonder if they talked about the value of preserving unity by learning to work with different personalities. Did they talk about the power of appreciation to endure? We don't know, but what we do know is this. When Paul was in prison in Rome, and he wrote his letter to the Hebrews, the congregation in Judea and Jerusalem, Luke was with him. And do you remember what Paul wrote in Hebrews 6, verse 10? He said, God is not unrighteous so as to forget your work and the love you showed to his name by ministering. Jehovah did not forget these women, and Jehovah will not forget you. May you work hard to put into practice the things that you have learned, and may you be able to say that you are more outstandingly a minister of Christ.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Lippold, for those scriptural examples. We are more determined to focus on our work as ministers of the Christ.
What a delightful program. And that was only the first part. Later this month, parts 2 and 3 will be available on jw.org. So be sure to tune in. In this month's video postcard, we are visiting the islands of Sao Tome and Principe. On a world map, they look like tiny spots located in the Gulf of Guinea off the western coast of Africa. The rainy, humid climate in Sao Tome and Principe produces luxurious rainforests covering the slopes of mountains that can rise to over 2,000 meters or 6,600 feet. These tropical islands are surrounded by palm-fringed beaches. The residents are often gifted with amazing sunsets. The people of Sao Tome and Principe are hardworking, often washing their clothes in the Abad River. Many have work related to palm trees, which includes palm oil, palm wine, and handicraft production. And we can see that it is hard work. Their delicious cuisine is based on a wide variety of fruits, such as guava, passion fruit, papaya, mango, as well as seafood dishes. But there is another work taking place on Sao Tome and Principe. These friendly and warm-hearted people have a deep appreciation for God's Word. And it is customary to see them reading the Bible on their balconies. During the pandemic, the brothers and sisters adapted their preaching work by writing letters and delivering them as conditions permit. The 933 publishers in the 14 congregations are conducting 1,705 Bible studies, and baptisms continued throughout the pandemic. Because of the high cost of internet access, some of our brothers and sisters, along with other interested ones, can attend the meetings, the memorial, and conventions by means of the only local TV channel. Thanks to this arrangement, many Bible studies are requested every week. What was the memorial attendance in 2021? The attendance was 5,794, which is more than 6 times the number of publishers. Here are some of your fellow brothers and sisters from the Sao Marsal congregation. The 131 publishers there conduct 190 Bible studies. The happy and loyal brothers and sisters from Sao Marsal and all from Sao Tome and Principe send their love and greetings. And we send our love back to all of them. Thank you for joining us this month. From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is JW Broadcasting.